thank you so much for being here. This is pretty special. I think anytime that we get in a room together, I feel like it can go into beautiful places. And the synchronicities worked out perfectly this trip because you were in Florida, Jag and I are in Florida, and yeah, it's exciting. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super grateful to be here and always have fun just hanging out, deep conversations. And always like to meet the people you hang with too, because you seem to attract a pretty interesting group of people who are also just life explorers, you know, just really doing awesome things and open-minded to a certain degree, where they're willing to explore things outside of, you know, the comfort zone, which this is right up my alley.
Yeah, it's nice to attract that.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like you have to be in a place of knowing who you are, or at least on that path of self-discovery or curiosity to be able to get there. And Jag and I talk about it all the time of like, sometimes you might have to lose friends over that because you're changing who you are, you're changing your community. And it's exciting that we get to talk to people who have gone through the difficult times, and that's what we're all about here at I Can Fly, is that we want to talk about the vulnerability in your life, because, you know, looking at Instagram today, everything's perfect and everyone's trying to be perfect in their own ways, and it's hard to mimic that in life because life isn't about being perfect. And yeah, it's just exciting to be able to relate to others. And I know with myself and the things that I've gone through, I've wanted to feel not alone in a lot of things. And yeah, I mean, normally we kind of like work chronologically, but I think leading into after this question, is there anything that you're working on or trying to self-discover right now?
It's a never-ending journey. There's always something, you know. And it's interesting where in the beginning there were specific things I would really be working on. But now it's like what's most pressing. And then this year I just shut down a business in the last year. And a lot of it's been, it was a challenge for me because this was one of my biggest fears, was closing down this business, kind of like bankrupting it and like failing, like accepting defeat. But I learned so much about myself in the process. It was actually became transformative. And I've always kind of felt that way, that the entrepreneurial journey can be a spiritual journey as well, because the lessons that you learn about yourself, you know, if you really use it as a tool for self-awareness, it could be one of the most transformational things. And so now it's really just about allowing myself to have some space so I can focus on the things that I know are most important. Whereas before I was just like literally a recovering serial entrepreneur is what I like to call myself. And I realized I was just trying to do everything and anything, you know, to distract myself, to want to be successful, to want to make more money. And it came down to a few specific things, which was fear of being alone and feeling unsafe. And, you know, being in a lot of partnerships helped me to not feel alone, helped me feel supported. And also making money gives you the sense of security. And I sort of saw that in these patterns. And so I'm just now trying to see where those patterns come up in my life and just challenge that narrative, like taking it head on. And one realization also was, you know, I had this fear of conflict, which kind of ties into those two, because I'm having conflict with people, then I have less friends. Or if I have conflict, then I'm unsafe if there's like a fight. And part of shutting down the business was I had to kind of like man up to like my staff and let them know, like, hey, we're closing this place down after 7 years. All the community that was there, this was a space for people to transform, to feel connected if they're going through their own journey of self-discovery, which is a place that I needed when I first like started drinking ayahuasca and like, you know, shifting from like, oh my God, I know everything to I know nothing about anything that's going on in this world.
This was the Breathwork Center in Toronto?
Yeah. And so, you know, it was hard and really just, you know, being confronted with, okay, I got to deal with the bank now with some debt that I'm personally guaranteed with and all these things. But when I really just like said, okay, like I'm going to lean into where my fears are now that I can see where they are, like this fear of conflict, and show up for everyone with as much integrity as possible. There was nothing there. Like there's nothing to be afraid of, because when I stepped up in integrity, they met me where I was at, or I figured out a solution, or I just dealt with it. And like the shift in energy was like unbelievable. Like how other things started moving in, you know, like money came in from places that I totally forgot about. Like,
Wow.
like a lawsuit that was just like 3 years, like just sitting in the middle of nowhere. And then like all of a sudden just get settled out of the blue.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, like, cause now I'm putting my focus into, okay, like I'm ready to let go of this. I'm ready to move my focus into what I know is in alignment with me. I was probably hanging on to this business for like 2 years too long.
Wow.
And just losing like so much time and energy and focus. But it had to bring me to that point of self-awareness to see what was really, why I was really holding on to it. And that's like the whole process of self-inquiry. You know, we can distract ourselves and just like not pay attention to things, or we can really pay attention and see like, oh, there's actually a gift in every single shadow, every single struggle. If you look hard enough, there's a gift in there for you.
Well, you talked about earlier, like in the beginning of this, what you're saying is giving yourself space. Like, what does that mean to you and to the people who you coach?
Yeah. So one thing being a coach, it's so much easier to coach other people than it is to coach yourself. You know,
Yeah.
I know what to do,
Yeah.
but the hard part is integrating that and actually doing it. And that's what a good coach will help them to kind of like, okay, like we'll have this realization. Now, how do we actually do it? How do we kind of take those next steps? And for me, and again, being a serial entrepreneur, I just had so much on my plate. So my dad, got 2 kids, loving wife, like 5 companies that I play a really key role in each one as far as like strategy, implementation, execution. And what started happening was I was giving like a half-hearted effort to each one, not because I'm a half-hearted guy, because I could only give half-hearted because I was spread in so many ways. And I don't know if you guys follow like the gene keys or anything like that. It gets a little bit woo-woo, but it's like an astrological chart. A guy named Richard Rudd, he adopted human design. So human design is like you get your natal chart, it has this imprint of the stars, and they create this map of like how to best like navigate Earth, like what kind of work you should be doing, you know, how you should be like a teacher or something like this, like all these different things.
What type of personality you are.
Type of personality, or generator or manifestor. It's a little bit woo-woo, but like when I read it the first time, like my mind was like, okay, this I agree with. Like reading your astrology is like, yeah, this is kind of on point, and this is like bullshit. So I read it like 5 years ago, and anything that I didn't agree with, I was just like, oh, this is bullshit. So I didn't look at it for 5 years. Then a friend brought it up, the gene keys, which is similar. So I looked at my thing again, and I was like, damn, if I would just listen to this 5 years ago, like it told me everything I should have been doing. Like it said, you should be a teacher and you should be sharing things. And we'll get into like what I'm doing now as far as like teaching, where I thought I was never going to be a teacher. My wife was a teacher. She's like, no, I'm not a teacher. Teacher's not for me. And it just showed me these things. And the gene keys, so this is like using this snapshot, like how to like live your life and have the most support in the areas of your life based on what your human design is, based on the stars. So it creates a imprint of like the day you were born, the city you were born in, the stars are aligned in a certain way. And it's interesting because like a lot of the major companies, like to do product launches on like a full moon or a specific star thing, and they really use astrology to bring different energies into their businesses and their product launches. And governments will have meetings on certain days. I have a friend who's an astrologer, started showing me some of these things. Like, yeah, you see this specific date here they choose for launch? I'll show you why they chose that date. I'm like, whoa. So what I started doing was I got this guy to pick all my business and corporation dates. So I'm launching a new business. I was like, you pick the date, time, and I'll get my lawyer. And my lawyer's think I'm crazy. I'm like, listen, you have to register this company at this exact time from this exact city, like in between this window here, or else don't do it. And like they would do it online. They can do it.
That's awesome.
And it's crazy because out of the last couple of businesses I did, most of them have been fairly successful. In their own ways, because each chart will have a different energy to it. Like one's more for like communication strength, like partnerships, like online stuff. And the one that was the biggest struggle was before I kind of met this guy, or when I didn't, was the one I just shut down. And if you look at the chart for it, it like shows like you have management issues, you have issues with water, like the water sign is off, like it floods, we have like leaks, like all this crazy things. And like for 7 years, he was like, you should like just close the business, reopen it, like get a different chart. The chart's really messing up this company. But part of the chart was something to do with like new creation, like something else that's not this business going to come out of it. And the 2 main things that I do now are both kind of seated in that place. So the place itself never really made money. It always just like a community space, just enough to get by and like deal with all the headaches that came with it. But the 2 companies that are just really taking off for me right now, if that place didn't exist, then none of that would exist.
Wow. There you go. That's it.
So anyways, I think it was a long way to answer that first question of like what I'm working on right now. But I'm always just trying to like improve myself. The other thing actually I'm really trying to work on is like physical health. Because like the last 3 or 4 years, I've been so focused on like 2 startup companies that, you know, not playing sports as much, you know, so like the body's getting older, like working out not enough. Like I still do my morning routine, like meditation, I do saunas, ice baths, those kind of things. But like physical strength, I got 2 torn ACLs from soccer injuries. So now it's like, okay, like I need to get that foundational strength, playing with some new diets. Did a lot of like diet testing in my life. So
Nice.
like
That's exciting.
testing out carnivore right now, which is like a lot of people that know me is like I was 12 years like hardcore vegetarian, like wouldn't touch me. But I think it's important in life to have like the ability to challenge your beliefs, you know, like just to be able to say, okay, like at one time I was, you know, really believe this, but like, okay, that might not be true. You know, I might not have the full picture, or it's okay to like change your mind sometimes and not be so stuck to like ideology or specific belief. Because things change all the time.
Sure.
So that's what I'm kind of working on right now as well. So
Yeah. Well, that's a really, I mean, powerful breakdown of where you're at today. But I think, you know, from my seat, what I find so frankly fascinating about, you know, yourself is the desire to lead such a selfless life in wanting to help others, right? You've really dedicated yourself to the mastery of a specific craft. And like you said, you found in this chart that years ago, you know, it could have told you that this is the direction you could have been going. But you got there eventually, and that's fun to hear. But maybe, you know, going back earlier in your life, I just think it's incredible when you meet someone that truly ends up on a path of trying to serve others. And I'd love to learn about your childhood more and growing up, and if that was something that played.
How much time you got? And just remind me, I'll just finish the end of the story. So the Gene Keys, which was Richard Rudd, was like, so human design was like your chart is what you do. The Gene Keys is a process of going inward. And there's 64 gene keys, which he relates to the human DNA, the 64 codons, which is also related to the ancient Chinese I Ching, Taoist text, which is like these 64 hexagrams that are these very like cryptic messages that people contemplate on for spiritual development. And the first line of the book is just I'm going to paraphrase, it's probably screwed up, but just the act of putting this into writing, it's already lost most of its meaning, because it's such like a mysterious and kind of like spiritual path where you really got to sit with these things. And so when I put my birthday in, anyone could do this. It's free. Like it gives you your chart. It gives you these 4 main kind of themes about like your life's path, about what you're here to learn. And the 2 for me was transforming the shadow of complexity into simplicity. And he gives these talks on it. And as I'm listening to this summer, coming back from Costa Rica, feeling stressed, like I need to make a change. Like I'm back in a place where I was like 7 years ago. I did all this work and I feel like I'm back at square one where I'm feeling. And he starts by saying, he's like, yeah, so most people spend the first 40 years of their life making it as complicated as possible. And the next 40 years trying to wind that down to die with some sort of sense of simplicity. And I'm just like, oh, that's where I am right now. And I didn't know what to do. And like, you know, figured it out. You know, it took me 6 months to kind of figure it out in a few plant medicine ceremonies. And the other thing that was also in my profile was transforming half-heartedness through commitment to devotion. So devotion, like they have like a city, which is the highest expression of each one. The shadow, which is like not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like kind of like a shadow is like something that's like maybe seen as negative or a challenge. And the gift is what's in the shadow. And it's like, I was like, okay, I don't resonate with that half-heartedness, because I was telling you earlier. And as I sat with it, I started seeing how I do too many things, and I feel like I go all in on all of them, but because I'm splitting myself into so many ways, it's only getting a half-hearted effort. And if I just chose one and went all in, like what could happen?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it was like, okay, like how do I go from where I am right now, where I realize this, to choosing what I'm really aligned with and pouring myself in, really committing and devoting myself. I was okay, like what does it feel like to really devote yourself to something? I was really trying to get that energy. I was like, man, I wish I could do that. And I can't do that right now. It's like when you devote yourself to golf and you're just like in it fully, where you eat, sleep, you know, when you get up to that tee, you visualize, you know, okay, this ball's going exactly where I want. That kind of devotion to that. And I was like, okay, like there's moments in my life where I felt devoted to something and I knew how deep I could go with it. right? And then you get distracted and it pulls away, and then you kind of like get half-hearted again, right? Things come up, or maybe your interests, you know, are not aligned so much anymore. So I started really feeling into that, and it started bringing my awareness to things I really want to devote myself to, and that's kind of where my work is kind of moving towards right now. So we'll come back to that. We'll start, or do you want to go there?
I want to dive there for a second, because what you said about the first 40 years of your life being, or this was someone that said this more generally, that you dedicate the first 40 years of your life to making it as complicated as possible. I feel like I'm really driving down that road.
Yeah. So am I, man.
Pretty full throttle.
I'm right there.
I've shifted into a high gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating. Like, how, if for someone that is, out of just make it about even me, like if I wanted to learn more about this and like really dive in, where would you begin? Like, if you would, I mean, we talked specifically about human design and this, you know, gene keys.
So the best thing you can do is follow your intuition. So something I said sparked a curiosity within you. You look into it, and you see is that curiosity still there, and you follow that, and it's going to lead you. So like for me, my first real curiosity was like ayahuasca. And once it came, I couldn't like stop thinking about it. Like I was listening. Something's like, hey, there's something here for you. So now, you know, I might have said something that sparked something. Like, okay, like I want to look into this stuff. You start looking into it, and you might look into it, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, it's a dead end. It's not for me. And you're not going to force it. But when you have that curiosity, but all of these practices, breath work, ice bath, working out, whatever, it's a practice in self-awareness. And the more you can be self-aware of how things make you feel, really sitting with things, contemplating, thinking about it, it's going to open up that journey for you. You know, so I talked about like looking at how complex it is and trying to move into simplicity. It's like that resonated. Okay, why is my life so complex? What's making my life feel complex? So you just start really contemplating.
Asking the hard questions.
And you ask yourself the questions rather than just pushing through like a bulldozer like a lot of us do. It's like, let's just win, let's accomplish, let's, you know, competition driven based on what our beliefs are, whatever. And we just have these super busy life that we're running in a hamster wheel. We don't think about where we want to go. We don't think about how we want to feel. We're just either putting out fires or just rolling through life. Next thing you know, 30 years goes by and you're like, shit, I'm still in the exact same place I was. Maybe I have more money. Maybe I have more problems, or maybe not, but like my mindset is still, both, but nothing's really changed on the inside. I've just been following this same kind of things. I haven't given myself time to create space where I can sit back and just contemplate, like, what do I really want? You know, how do I want to kind of like devote my energy? What are the things that I'm doing in my life that don't feel good? And I can't really answer, why am I doing this? You know, I start asking myself that question, is like, why are you really doing this? Sometimes I couldn't have an answer. And then I really had to dig deep. It's like, oh, like I realized, you know, I was going to start this company last year. Like, I need to start another company. Like, my wife's like, dude, are you insane? Like another company? I'm like, yeah, it's going to be easy. It's going to be fun. Like, that's always in my head. Whenever I start some new projects, like, yeah, it's so simple. It's going to be easy. And then you start going into it. And it's like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But I realized it had nothing to do with the business. I wanted to partner with this friend of mine that I love, and something inside of me was like, yeah, by doing this partnership together, you're gonna spend more time together, you're gonna be closer, you're gonna do all these things. And I realized actually the opposite's gonna happen, because if this doesn't work, we start spending money and we're not going forward, we're gonna probably start fighting about it or whatever. And then I was scared to say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore because it's not alignment, because I didn't want that conflict. You know, I didn't want to like make it worse. So it was this weird situation I put myself in. But of course, when I really sat down, I had a heart to heart with him, told him why, like, you know, like this is, and he was like, you know what? I totally understand. I knew this was coming. I felt the same way. And we both felt better about it. Like, we're still great friends.
Wow.
You know?
That's nice.
Yeah. So that's where you start. You got to start really just observing your life. If you don't meditate, take some time to meditate. You know, with my clients, when I coach, the first thing I want them to start doing is working on slowing down their mind, giving them some space, and working on that focus muscle. Like, how do you keep your attention on something and just be able to sit with it without the mind kind of going away? That's like meditation. So a lot of people think meditation is just like relaxation and quieting, which is part of it, but it's really a practice in focus and being able to hold your focus on something, on your breath, you know, quieting your mind and holding it there, you know. And once you build that, now your ability to kind of like, you know, do something and really put your energy into it, now you're building this kind of skill set.
Yeah.
That's what we're working on. We're like 4 weeks into a program, him and I. And
first
it's like self-contemplation. When and what time of day and where are you giving yourself time for self-contemplation? I'm like, what even is that? And it's like, well, it can be meditation, and the meditations that we're doing now are just 20 minutes a day. And it's like, okay, just be, don't move, and whatever comes. And the first few times, like I've meditated a lot in my life, but not consistently in the last few years. And the things that are coming to me, like, oh, I have to do this. I'm like, should I write them down? Or he's like, no, like they'll still be there when the 20 minutes is up, and like you can go back into it. But like giving that time of just like having everything just flee by the wayside. And that's been so powerful for me, and finding the answers and asking yourself the questions, and it's been super special.
Yeah, get some clarity. And contemplation is like, it's like there's concentration and there's like meditation. So meditation is like trying to clear your mind of no thought, and then concentration is like super focused. Then contemplation is that in between where you're kind of just like, okay, we're clearing some space, but we're also going to be like focusing and like bring some awareness to something. So you meditate, you clear your mind, and then you can like, okay, like, what do I want to create in my life? How do I want to feel every day?
How do I want to feel?
You know, like how do I want to feel? Because I think like a lot of like people that do manifestation boards and stuff like that, it's like, okay, you put the Ferrari up there, you put the 10-bedroom house, you put the beautiful like Barbie doll, like wife, you know, like you have all these things what you think you want. And you don't realize like, man, that Ferrari, I'm not gonna be able to park it anywhere. I'm not gonna be able to drive it anywhere. People are gonna like, you know, want to go for a ride, and it's gonna cost so much to kind of like maintain. And then the house, I'm gonna need like 2 butlers. I'm gonna need like 14 garden staff. It's gonna feel so empty and lonely all the time. And I don't even know why I want those things. So I think like that's what we should want, and that's what everyone else wants.
Programming.
And that, you know, 10 out of 10 wife that every other guy's gonna try to hit on. She's probably gonna be, I'm just generalizing here, but like maybe high maintenance, all these things. It's like, why don't you start by thinking about like, okay, like how do I want to feel? How do I want my partner to make me feel? How do I want to make them feel? How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? You know, like I start thinking about that versus like the material aspect of it. So that when you start having interactions where you can recognize that feeling, like, oh, okay, that's what it feels like. Or you do something that's fulfilling, you know, like what does it mean? What does that word even mean? To be fulfilled? Like what does that feel like? And the first time, like I didn't know what it meant for a long time. I realized in my mid-20s what it felt like to be unfulfilled for the first time. And that was kind of just like, whoa. Like that was something like once I saw it, I couldn't shake it. And that kind of led me into like a spiritual path. But it's giving yourself that space and like just allowing yourself to create. We're creators, right? So it's like, okay, what do you want to create? And how do you want to feel? And focus on that first rather than being up here. Because this is like a superpower for many people, like your mind and your ability to problem solve, to make money, and to like figure things out, especially for men. And our heart's where we kind of create, and it's more fluid and spacious and flowy rather than rigid. And like, how do you use like the best of this, but with the best of this to create a life, purpose, passion? And for me, I started realizing that I felt fulfilled when I was in service, when I was like helping others. And that was the best feeling. It felt better than making any kind of money. You know, I'd make a little bit of money and then it was like, okay, what next? Like right away, it was like, it was instant gratification. But then within the next day, I was like, more, which I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I have some friends, I have a lot of friends who are very wealthy, and like, they're just like so driven. You can't even talk to them for 5 minutes. You know, their mind is already thinking about like 10 other things that they need more. And I know they don't need more. They have more than they can ever spend in a lifetime. And I remember being like 18 or 20 and like hearing what their goals were. It's like, yeah, once I make like $2 million, like that's all I need. I'm like done. And they made that like 20 years ago. And now it's like, they're probably like $1 billion is probably on somewhere on their vision board now. Right. It's like, okay, like why, like, try to prove something to someone, probably, like, but there's some belief in there, like I'm not good enough, or I need to be seen and heard, or a fear of security, and that money is like just always keeps them safe, or someone's gonna steal it from them.
Dude, just
this is awesome.
The concept of asking, how do you want to feel? Just even like generally that you have the power within you to decide how you want to feel. I mean, I feel like that's something you can give up so quickly and just think that everything externally has this ability to just take over how you feel about yourself, how you wake up and feel each day. And this concept of meditation, which in all honesty, I've bounced in and out of with no regularity and commitment in my life. But every time I've done it, I've said, oh, this feels good. And I like, you know, where I'm going with it. And I used it in golf. Jason Goldsmith was the first person to introduce me to it. But, you know, in this world today, in this next generation, I mean, we are living in a time that is so driven based on instant gratification and so driven on the inability to just sit with your own thoughts. You know, I mean, I worry, you know, this book just came out this past week that was titled The Anxious Generation. You know, I've got a 9-year-old little sister that I already see, you know, grabbing at devices and needing that constant dopamine hit. And if you're feeling that in yourself, and I'm feeling that in myself, you know, I grab my phone when I start to think about something and I don't want to deal with the thought, and I grab it to go swipe Instagram for a little bit to just distract myself from thoughts. But again, I know I asked a question around where do you begin earlier, and maybe that self-discovery side, but if you wanted to start to slow down, like where would you first begin in that path?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's just starting to bring awareness to like when you're picking up that phone. You know, it's like, oh, do I need to pick up this phone right now? Or I'll tell some of my clients, like, just put an alarm on your phone that just says to breathe like 5 times in the day. Just remind yourself to like, okay, like let me just like take a breath, slow down. Because, you know, the patterns that we've adapted to or also adopted, you know, our nervous system gets into this kind of like vicious cycle where it just keeps like self-perpetuating this like fight or flight response. And when we're in fight or fight, we're usually like breathing shallow, breathing up into our chest, mouth breathing, which makes the mind really kind of like scattered. And when you're fight or flight, it's also, you're always looking for like threats and dangers, and your ability to focus also is like, you know, like very scattered thoughts, you know, like quick, you know, ADHD or inability to concentrate. And the antidote to that is like slowing that down, you know, telling your nervous system to relax, breathing through your nose, getting better sleep at night, a lot of these little things. It's just starting to implement little things and starting to bring your awareness to like, okay, like, why is it every time I feel this, I grab my phone? You know, why do I do that? You know, I want to avoid feeling a certain way. And the avoidance of feeling a certain way will actually keep us stuck in that space that we're in, because our emotions is like a GPS back to our soul. It's trying to like get your awareness to kind of look at something, you know, and if we just keep it pushed down there, we might feel better in the moment, but we're not dealing with something that probably needs to be dealt with if we want to kind of move past it. And it's funny because like we do a coach training as well, and we were joking about it the other week, because like when we work with our coaches, I make sure I bring them through the process, so they're going through all their own shit first, and it's like, okay, it's work, right? You got to deal with your emotions. And you know, they were calling it the river of misery, where you're trying to get across the river and you got to sit in this like miserable state that we're so used to just pushing down. As soon as we feel it, it's like sex, drugs, alcohol, working out, anything to not feel it, to distract ourselves. And when it comes up, we're going to find the next thing to do it. But what if you just sat with it and really started questioning, like, what is this feeling trying to show me? Where is this coming from? And it usually will come down to a certain belief you have about something. And you know, my partner Tice Gibson, she's a genius. She's taught me a lot of the things I know about the subconscious mind and stuff like that. And you know, she says like there's layers to your experience and reality. So at the base layer, there's beliefs. And when we're born in our first like 8 years, 10 years of life, you know, we're trying to navigate this mysterious experience that we have. Like, how do we get here? What's going on? And the ego is trying to protect you. So things happen, and these programs, these beliefs are coming in. It's like, okay, like every time I go near Jag, he gives me a slap in the back of the head. So I can't trust this guy. You know, I gotta like, you know, big brother or big cousin. Yeah. So like, I'm kind of like always rough around boys now. So I can't trust the older guys. Or, you know, my parents always saying money doesn't grow on trees. So like, I'm always like fearing that I'm never gonna have enough money. And so you're picking up all these beliefs. Or maybe there's a trauma, like an impact, like something happens where you now have a belief like I can't trust X type of person, or driving in a car. And we don't carry the trauma with us our whole life. Like there's not that boogeyman around the corner. We carry the belief that it imprinted on us, that we believe to be true. And if you can change a belief, you can shift the way you respond to these things. Once we have beliefs, then we have thoughts. So something happens, we interpret. Is this good? Is this bad? What do I think about this? Right? Based on what your beliefs are. So, if I see, you picking on another kid, I'm like, oh, like that's a piece of shit. It's just like my uncle Jag, who was always like playing around. I'm just using an example. I know you're this guy. But our beliefs are always going to like start judging things, and we think about it. And then once you have a thought about it, then you feel an emotional reaction in your body. So beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and then you feel it. It's like, oh, I'm afraid, or I'm scared, or I'm going to run away. And finally is action. Like you act, react, you fight, flight, freeze. It's just some sort of action or reaction. But the amazing part about that is if we can go back and change our belief about whatever it is, and there's about 18 core beliefs that exist, and most of us have a bunch of them that we ascribe to subconsciously. Like I said, for me, some of the present ones, the most present ones were like fear of being alone, fear of being unsafe growing up. I was an older brother, I had 2 younger brothers. My middle brother was 5 years younger than me. So, didn't have an older brother protect me in school. Went to a few different schools when I was young, always was like in the playground, and you get picked on, bullied, whatever. And I was just like, I don't know, dude, a little scrawny kid. Ended up working out a lot in high school, probably because of that. Also got into fighting, like not like martial arts, but like I would start scrapping because I had to prove that I wasn't, not to like mess around. And also that fear of being alone, same thing. And so those are mine. And then only till recently I started seeing, as I was doing work on myself, how these show up in all areas of my life, and how I start doing things unhealthily because I have this belief. Like how, in my 20s, I wanted to go to every party to show my face so that people would remember me and I wouldn't feel alone, have a lot of friends. And I was like, and I see like, why would I do that for? It was like, I'd go somewhere for 20 minutes, we'd go to the next place. So I tried to be the cool guy with my friends, always being seen and heard. But I saw like there was this thing that I had this fear of being alone, and I wanted people to always kind of be in touch with me in that way. Where now it's like, okay, like I don't feel that urge to do that anymore because I don't have that fear anymore. So it's not driving that behavior, if that makes sense. And so we can use our emotions to start asking these questions. Okay, like, where are my beliefs in all this? And there's processes to do this, but it all starts with being aware and recognizing patterns within yourself.
That's oh man, this is amazing. Such a perfect transition, because this morning, every once in a while, I always catch myself and have awareness of the programming that I've built into my life, whether consciously or subconsciously. And talking about bringing it back to Instagram and your phone and all that stuff, every once in a while, I rearrange all the apps in my phone, because I catch myself being like, okay, swipe over once and it's up on the left, Instagram. Okay, now I just do that. And when you redo your apps and you catch yourself swiping and unintentionally going to something, you're like, holy shit. All right, now I'm messed up. I understand that I'm semi-addicted to whatever it is that I'm going to. And it can also lead into other things in your life, just to like switch your brain patterns up. Like every once in a while, I'll brush my teeth with my left hand, or I'll wipe with the other hand. Make it things that like you do every single day the exact same way. Switch it up and like see what happens, and like it just brings awareness to all the things that you're programmed in. And be like, okay, well, do I want to live this way? How do I want to feel this way? Do I want to feel like a robot every single day, or do I want to feel?
And that's the problem. A lot of things become like subconscious. We're not aware of them. We don't see them. It's just the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind runs the show. The conscious mind cannot outwill the subconscious mind. That's why like the gyms, they love New Year's promos. It's like, yeah, come and sign up. First month $1. 95% of the people, their willpower will take them to like 2 weeks, and then they're going to show up for the rest of the year because their subconscious mind is not aligned with them getting into the gym. There's not like there's no alignment. It's like they want to do this, but there's a belief back there like that's blocking them from actually following through on their goals. If they have if they have like a need for like connection, and they join like a running club, they're way more likely to commit to that and get in shape than signing up to the gym and go solo. If they have if they just want to get in shape, it's like, okay, like I actually have a higher need for connection. So if I can just join a club that does something athletic, they'll commit to that. Right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Versus like going to the gym because they want to look better and meet someone of the opposite sex, but there's like a fear or belief there that they're not good enough. And it's like, okay, forget it, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know what we sidetracked from the question was.
No,
I would first off, I'm hooked into this conversation and in a deep internal web right now of questions inside my head. But I would like to bring it back to you and discovering more about who you are and how you have found this path in life of helping others. Because I think, said quite simply, I'm hooked into the conversation, but though I know you a little bit, I don't know you very deeply, and I just love to learn more about your life and how you've come into sitting in this chair today.
Yeah, so maybe start in Toronto and...
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, where do I want to start here? Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Toronto. We grew up in a place that was like 95% Italian. So it's like Little Italy. You know, you ever watch The Sopranos? Mm-hmm. That's how it was, Toronto version. So like all the same shit that was happening in Sopranos, nice. It was like what I grew up around, like coffee shops, different businesses that are all run by that, like just
some good food.
Good food, just a strange place. Like it was a bubble. It was definitely a bubble. A lot of competition. You know, I remember going to school and like there's kids in high school driving like cars that I never thought I would afford in my entire life. And I'm like, these 16-year-olds just got their license and they got like these like fancy rims, like Golf GTI Sports. It's like crazy. They created this like need to be successful. And growing up there, it was like, even for my parents, like, if you want to like net worth and self-worth is like the same thing. If you want to be successful, if you want people to like you, if you want to be anything, you need to make money. And I was a smart kid growing up. I went to this like special school for kids, which I hated, where I had to go like twice a week to this different school. And they made us do like all these like stupid little puzzles and brain teasers and crap. And I just wanted to be with my friends and did pretty good in high school, got into business school in Toronto. And really was like always an entrepreneur. Like I just started like any kind of thing to make money. So like think about like where I grew up in that kind of neighborhood, and like there is a lot of ways to make money doing things that were kind of like side hustles and stuff like that. We'll just leave it at that for now. And it was just like, okay, like how do we make money? And went to business school. My dad wanted me to be an accountant, a CA.
Yeah, what were your parents like?
So my dad was an accountant. He was a soccer fanatic. And my mom was a daycare kind of superintendent for kids. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. Like, we weren't poor either. Like, we were kind of like middle class, but like everyone around us was like driving Mercedes and stuff. So we were like trying to like keep up, you know? And my dad wanted me to be better than them. They wanted me to like, they always put me in this pedestal. Like when I was a kid, like, oh, I go to this smart school. And I was always trying to be like, no, like, I don't want to do that. Like I was always trying to like hide from that. And then he was not a chartered accountant. He thought like, okay, if my son's got to be better than me, he's got to do this chartered accountant thing. And like, if you know me, like there's no way I would have ever been a chartered accountant. So I tried. I remember getting a third year college, walking like in Toronto in the middle of winter to go buy this third year Canadian tax law book. And it was like one of the first times I remember seeing like synchronicity, because the book was $111. I remember the red kind of like digital, like 111. And I felt like something was speaking to me in that moment. And as I was walking away with this like books like this thick, it's like I had like a cross on my back going to my crucifixion, walking in the middle of the winter to my parking lot, which was like a 2-mile walk to the other side. And I'm just like, there's no way I'm going to do this in my life. And I also was thinking that $111 is a lot of money at that age. And if I, every day that I don't return it, I'm going to lose a percentage of the money I'm going to get back. That's what worked back then in college. So I was halfway back. I turned around, went back, dropped it off, and I'm like canceled all my accounting courses the next day and just went all into marketing and business.
Wow.
And it was around the same time that I started gambling too. Like I was surrounded by like a lot of gambling in that time. And I found this crazy like newspaper that had these like sports picks in it. It was like, yeah, like Joe Wiz, you know, call, give your 5-star picks and guaranteed.
Oh yeah.
So I call this guy up.
Guaranteed.
I call this guy up and he gives me a couple picks, like his free picks or like his $50 picks, whatever. And they come in. I'm like, oh shit. So I tell a couple friends, found this thing. He's like, yeah, you want the next one? It's like $500. I give you my best picks. Like they're gonna like go like 5-0 guaranteed. I'm like, okay, so we all get like someone's get a credit card, put it in, put the picks in. We start putting all these bets in. They all come in, all 5 of them, and we're like, holy shit, it's fat. Like we're gonna be rich.
That's
the
worst thing that could have happened.
I go to the bank. I got like $5,000 cash, and this is like, you know, I'm kind of broke in university. I drive like a $1,500 car. Like this is like $5,000 in my hand. It was just like, okay, wow, like I'm large now. So I go to the bank and like I'm opening a trading account. Like I'm gonna become like some like stock trader. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, they're like, give us a couple of days, we'll open the account for you. This is like a while ago, so it took a few days to open the account. So go back, we called this guy again, and now we're calling like every bookie in town. We're trying to find out like who will give us like action, who will let us like put bets in. And he gives us the next like 5 or 6 picks, and we just like smash them everywhere. Goes 0 for 7.
No.
So I lost the first money plus another like $5,000 on top of that I didn't have. Like I was like screwed. And I played soccer at the time, and that same weekend I remember tearing ligaments in my ankle. I was working like at a restaurant as a server at the time.
Damn.
So I am like TKO'd at this point. And my dad doesn't know this. I think I might have told him, but I told my dad he had to write me a check for school, and I went to the bank and cashed it to pay off the bookies. And then our mail key went missing, so I would intercept the mail so my school wouldn't send a letter like, hey, you haven't paid for school yet. And I had to work with an air cast on, serving tables to pay off my tuition so that my dad wouldn't find out that I did all this thing.
No way.
And it's so crazy because I was going to invest in Nortel stock, which was this tech stock that had just crashed to 60 cents. And within 3 months, it went up to like $10. And here I am saying like, dude, you're such an idiot, man. Like, you know, what are you doing? But that time gave me a lot of time to reflect. I was like, okay, like I need to smarten up and like do something different in my life. And so like I was still on the entrepreneurial path after that, but I kind of realized you're not going to win by gambling. Like that was like an obvious, like this is not the way to do it. Like
it's a good realization.
Yeah.
That quickly.
And so I really just started jumping into business, and I started seeing like, okay, like sales is the way to go. Like I started looking at like who's making the most money and has the best lifestyle and who's like winning, right? And I see like a lot of these sales guys that are just like, they're always out having lunch, they're driving nice cars, they're crushing it. So I got into food sales, and I had a few other businesses. Like I went to a tattoo shop, like this crazy tattoo shop downtown Toronto, like Yonge and Dundas Square, like 3 floors. Like my first tattoo artist, this Cuban Hare Krishna monk. And we start talking, and I really like this guy, and he gives me this book, which is about the philosophy of vegetarianism. And we're talking about vegetarianism, and he's like, yeah, you couldn't last a week as a vegetarian. I'm like, yeah. So he gives me the book, I read it. I end up going vegetarian for 12 years from that day forward. Because everything in the book that I read, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like I totally agree with everything. And so we became friends, and I ended up opening a tattoo shop with him. He ended up being like really crazy, and like it was like, I'm spending like $500,000 trying to build this tattoo shop out, like 3 floors, downtown. Yonge and Dundas is like Times Square in Toronto. Not as big, but it's like super expensive rent.
Wow.
And I just totally trusted him. That was another thing. Like I was just super trusting with people. Like I would like, they had a vision, I'd like go all in on it, putting myself like at risk. And it's funny because I just realized, like, because all these things, like, hey, why this happened. I learned a lot about myself in that situation, like getting in and having to get out, because he actually got someone to buy me out. But like 10 years later, because I was still vegetarian, I went to this thing called Vegan Fest in Toronto. And my current business partner, Thais, that's why I reconnected with her. We hadn't seen each other for a couple of years because we were friends. And because I went to that thing and saw her there, we have this business together now.
Wow. And
it's like, if I was never vegetarian, I would never went there. And it just pieced together. It was like, oh, dude, like this happened for a reason 10 years ago. And like, it was such a hard time in my life. I was pregnant with my first child. I was waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, driving all the way downtown Toronto, because I lived about an hour, busting my ass, like, because I had a construction company as well. So we were doing the renovation myself. I was building this thing out, like dealing with the permits. It was like a heritage building. So like there's all these restrictions. We were cutting through the floor, like to renovate. And you would see like like decades of history of like floor finishings from like the 80s, the 60s, all the way back to, I think the building was built in like the 1890s.
No way.
It was like the craziest thing. And like I literally probably lost years of my life, like just trying to build that place. And I finally got out of that. And the food business was kind of taking off a little bit. And I was kind of in this space where I was like comfortable, you know, I was like comfortable.
What age is this?
Probably like 27, right around the time I was getting married. And I was sitting at the side of my bed, and I remember looking at my hands, and I had this vision of like these old wrinkly hands, like my grandfather's hands. And it was like another one of these times where like something was speaking to me that was more than my imagination. Because I have a lot of like inner dialogue where, you know, we have chats, me and my buddy over here that's always getting myself into trouble. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, bro?
I get it.
You get that too? Yeah. We got our own best friend.
There's a lot of thoughts going on.
I'm trying to like train him to be like, instead of like my number one enemy, to be my biggest fan, to cheer me on, be like, good job, buddy, you're doing great, keep going, don't give up.
That was the name of our group chat we had together, Man in the Mirror.
Yeah, so just send him up. And so I have this vision where I'm like this old man, and it was like, the voice was like kind of joking with me. I was like, yeah, good job, buddy, like you figured out how to live a pretty comfortable life, you know, you got a nice car in the driveway, you got a house, you got a wife, you got a kid, you know, vacation once or twice a year, and you're gonna do the same thing for the next 20, 30, 40 years. You're gonna wake up at the same edge of this bed, and then you're gonna die. And who gives a shit? Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, fuck, you're right. It's meaningless. My life is meaningless. Like, who cares? The next generation, no one's gonna remember you. Like, wow. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I had all this potential as a kid. Look where I am, you know? Look where I am. And that was the first time I felt what it felt like to feel unfulfillment. I was distracting myself because I was unfulfilled. And I was thought like money and going out partying on the weekends was like the right thing to do. It was just trying to avoid from feeling unfulfilled and purposeless. But now I kind of knew what it was. And then it was like, okay, what do I do? And this guy here couldn't solve this problem. How to get out of like a tattoo shop is like, okay, I'm gonna sell it to this guy. Like, my mind's trying to. Like, this is a different kind of problem solving, you know. And so I was reading up on the Hindu philosophy, the Bhagavad Gita. And I started like reading like all these spiritual texts, and like obviously you go to Google and you're like, okay, what's the meaning of life? Hoping like it's gonna tell you like, hey, don't worry, we got you, man. Like, here, this is the answer. And it kind of just opened up.
Looked it up.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us have AI is probably like, hey, what's the meaning of life?
ChatGPT, tell me what to do.
ChatGPT, yeah. What do I do with my life? And it just led me down these rabbit holes. And I remember getting into Alan Watts because Buddhist philosophy was really interesting. You know, I grew up Catholic and not really connecting with the church. I wasn't like I love the teachings of Jesus. He must have been a cool guy, and I like what he stood for. And I think there was a lot of good stuff in the Bible. And after reading other philosophies, I realized, hey, there's other good stuff out there too that makes a lot of sense. It's really powerful. Mm-hmm. And the Buddhist philosophy was interesting because it's very different. Like the way they explain reality, I was like, whoa, like this is like, I guess it was like my first psychedelic experience, because the way my mind was being challenged to perceive things was so different than like, hey, there's this guy at the gates of heaven that's going to let you in and they're going to judge you for your sins. Like that was like, it was some visual reality of like, you know, the gatekeeper. And this was just like this fluid reality of like vibration and duality and yin and yang. But in one of his videos, there was a comment. And again, it was like that spark that went off that grabbed my attention. It was like, hey, if you think Alan Watts is interesting, Terence McKenna will blow your mind. And I was like, Terence McKenna, I never heard of this guy before. It was Terence McKenna. Google search, boom. I'm in like this like 6 hour like binge watch, like Terence McKenna. Just
like his lectures at Esalen.
Yeah, like just like this poet like talking about like psychedelics. And I'm like, man, I used to do mushrooms and drink beer and smoke pot in high school. Like I never had any of these experiences. And he's just talking about like using psychedelics as a tool for self-exploration and all these different theories about like evolution, and like just like my mind was blown. And I was just like, I need to figure out what this guy's talking about. So I started experimenting with mushrooms, and I started like looking. So he went down to the Amazon to look for psychedelic mushrooms. And he found ayahuasca, and he starts talking about his experiences like deep in the Amazon basin. And so I end up, now all I'm thinking about is ayahuasca. And I see DMT, the spirit molecules, like on Netflix, which I would have never watched if I wasn't into this stuff. But now it's like, yeah, you should watch this. You might be interested in this. Like, how do you know? Like the AI is already like messing with me. And so I watched it, and I'll never forget like the look on people's eyes as they were explaining their experience. Like it was speaking to me in a way like I need to understand what they're talking about. Like their story is not enough. Like there's something inside me that wants to experience. So I reached out to Rick Strassman, who did the study, and I'm like, hey man, like I want to volunteer. I want, hook me up for your next DMT study. He's like, yeah, man, that's not happening. No one's studying this stuff right now. But he's like, I know this guy who serves ayahuasca down in Brazil. He's legit. It's safe, and you should go there and like connect with him and see if it's a thing. Because it's the same molecule, same compound. DMT is in ayahuasca that they were doing intravenously. And it's interesting because ayahuasca has been around for like 5,000 years, and they have two different plants. One's a vine MAO inhibitor that if you would just like ingest the DMT, you would digest it and nothing would happen. Like the enzymes would kind of break it down. But with this vine, somehow in the jungle with hundreds of thousands of plant species, they figured out how to mix these two together, boil them, and then drink them so you can have these kind of journeys. And so I ended up reaching out to a guy who was actually friends with Terence McKenna. Like him and Terence McKenna like hung out and spent time together.
No way.
Yeah, and Luis Eduardo, he wrote a few books. Ended up meeting Dennis McKenna as well after a documentary I made a few years later.
Oh, right.
And so I go down. And
what was the documentary called?
Psyched Out. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. A crazy story.
I just want to drop these in so people can check it out.
Yeah. Psyched Out. Low budget film. Did it myself. Had no idea what I was doing. But it came out pretty good to my standards anyway. So anyways, so now I'm like, I got to tell my wife who's pregnant with her second child, like, hey, babe, I gotta go to Brazil for 2 weeks into the jungle to drink some psychedelic tea with a bunch of strangers so I can have like some visions and figure out my life. And she's like, are you fucking insane? Like what? There's no way. Like, and this is like 2012. So like a lot of people have heard about ayahuasca now. Most people have heard of it, and psychedelics kind of a little bit more mainstream. Like then it was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
Like there's no possible way, that's happening. So it was a lot of negotiation. I think she ended up getting a new car lease out of it, a BMW by the end of it. But I was like determined, and she saw like I needed to change something. So I ended up going down.
Was it with the Yawanawa?
No, it was with this guy, Luis Eduardo. It was in Florianopolis. It's beautiful, like north of the island. It was like the more like remote part of Florianopolis. Ocean there. Like, it was just like magically this little retreat center. And in my first experience, I died. Like just like had this brutal, violent death where I got like beat to death.
What?
And saw my last breath, closed my eyes, and felt myself disintegrate into the earth. And as I'm like disintegrating, like I think I'm dead. Like I was like so confusing. Like the first time doing it, it was strong, and I was dying. And as I surrendered into my death, I start like feeling like I'm getting eaten by like a million maggots. And as I bring my awareness to it, I turn into all of them at the same time. It was like the strangest thing, because like we have like a singular point of consciousness where we're here. So I became like a million maggots at the same time. So it was like this like crazy like amount of like stuff going on where I wasn't like singular anymore. I was just like connected to all these things. Mm-hmm. And then I went from that like I became like the roots that came into the grass, and I went out like into the light. And I was like reborn, and I was just like, what is going on? Like mind completely blown. I realized I'm back in the space, and it was like something was showing me about like this reincarnation continuity of life. I have a big fear of death. And it was like this humbling, showing me like, dude, you know nothing about anything, but don't worry, because everything's gonna be okay. Dude, at the same time. Like that's what was my and
it's a great explanation.
And my whole life changed after that moment. Like that was like, okay, like I know nothing about anything. Like I thought I was smart. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I was like clever guy. I was like this much out of like infinity. Okay, so just forget about knowing shit. And but don't worry. Like everything's gonna be okay. Like this is about like exploring and learning and playing and experiencing. And so I came back and I was like, okay, I gotta make some changes. Like I really got to make some changes in my life. And you were talking about earlier, like, like you might stop being friends with people, but it wasn't about like not wanting to be friends with them in some cases. It was like just not being in alignment. I didn't want to like go and party all the time. Like I just didn't, I still would party once in a while, but it wasn't like every Friday we following this routine anymore. I was like, no, like I needed new friends. I was curious. I wanted to learn from people. And so I started meeting all these different people. And I created a podcast. I started volunteering for a website, and just like life started changing. I started moving in a different direction.
What was the podcast called, and what was it about?
It was called the G and Coletti Show. So a buddy of mine who got shot 7 times, he's in the weed business, was trying to also like move into a different kind of like life. Like he was kind of grew up in that same area I did, and was kind of involved in
Got shot 7 times
in the weed growing business like early on. He's got a crazy story too. So we had a podcast together. We were just like get into health stuff and talk about these things. And I started just reaching out to people, and that's how I kind of connected with Wim Hof for the first time. I'll get to that story in 1 second. But also when I came back from Brazil for the first time, like I wanted to tell everyone about ayahuasca. It's like, okay, I found something. Everyone needs to know it's gonna be the biggest thing. Like, and everyone I would tell to would just be like, they would look at me like there's something was wrong with me. Like they were just like, and I couldn't understand. Like, so then I started like coming up with all of these like I had my arguments like about the historical use and the medicinal use, the transformational stories, and like all of this stuff, but they still didn't care. And I was like, I had the outline for a documentary, so okay, I make a documentary. Didn't know what I was doing, but because I was with this website, I had contact Graham Hancock and Gabor Mate and Rick Doblin and Dennis McKenna. So I'm like, hey, you guys want to be in this documentary? And this is before the whole psychedelic space kind of took off. Like I think probably like 2018, 2019, it started like money started going into it, so it started getting popular. So I started filming this documentary, and I probably wanted to like destroy it about 5 times because I was so scared to share it because of like I was still doing business and like fear of judgment. Like if I talk about this stuff, people think I'm crazy, or they won't do business with me, or like all these weird kind of beliefs. And about 3 or 4 times I was like, hey, this is just forget it, like lost the money, just throw it away. But then I realized like, and this is part of my spiritual journey, was like I'm wearing these different masks for different people. I'm trying to be someone different to people I do business with, to the people like are my friends, people in my family. Like, how do I be myself and not give a shit what other people think? It was hard. It was hard because there was all this fear. And I was like, okay, like if I put this out and someone is going to judge me because of what I believe in, then maybe I just shouldn't do business with them, period. And there was like this attachment to money. It's like, oh, but you want to lose that money? Okay, like whatever. If that's going to happen, it's going to happen. The opposite is actually what happened, which was that people were curious and wanted to ask questions because they respected me. The people who knew me were like, okay, like tell me about it. Like I want to hear like what happened, versus them being like, oh, like stay away, this is bad. So again, like just challenging my beliefs. And
not to interrupt you here, but I'm curious, like in those moments, did you find that people were reaching out to you that you would have never expected? Like I've found in some capacity that, I've started to ask, so many of these questions that you're bringing up now. I mean, these thoughts like in your late 20s of like what really matters and why am I here? And as I've opened up, I've had different people that I've connected with that I would have never guessed were thinking these same things. But I think deeply in all of us is this great questioning and, awakening of what's going on. And like,
absolutely. And as the more I would start allowing myself to be vulnerable and sharing the things I was uncomfortable sharing, I realized those are the things that many other people felt the same and were afraid to share. And by having that kind of courage to share that, it would allow me to connect with them on a deeper level. They would trust me, or they would feel like they had a connection, and we could speak about it more. But it was a process to get there. And this was like the first big one, was like putting out this psychedelic doc. So I do recording. I record with a guy who studied with the Shipibo for 15 years. He would come to Ontario like every once in a while. So I wanted someone who served the medicine to be in it. So I did an interview with him. Then I flew out to BC and I interviewed Dennis McKenna, who was Terrence McKenna's brother, and Gabor Mate, who was serving ayahuasca to heroin addicts in the Lower East End of Vancouver, and was getting amazing results. And the government shut him down.
Gabor Mate was?
Initially, yeah.
Wow.
And they shut him down. They're like, you can't do this. Like, you're going to go to jail. And like, he was kind of fighting for it for a while, and he kind of like gave it up. And when I went to talk to him, he's like, okay, there's two people, because I asked him, like, who should I interview? Like, I want some stories of transformation. Like, what have you seen? He's like, yeah, there's one woman from Boston who was a scleroderma, who had scleroderma. Scleroderma is like a disease where it usually happens for people who are severely traumatized. Is one kind of characteristic that a few people have told me that they knew someone who had scleroderma, that they had like some sort of like abuse as like traumas growing up. What happens is your body starts mummifying and your skin starts tightening up, and it's a slow, very painful death where you end up like dying in like a wheelchair or like in a stretcher type thing. And she had reversed that with ayahuasca. And another one was a girl in Toronto who was an 18-year heroin addict that, you know, turned her life around by coming to the medicine. And I'm on like a real low budget. And I'm like, okay, I live in Toronto. I'll get Lisa for sure. The Boston lady, like I can't, you know, whatever, maybe for the next one. We'll see how this one goes. So I go interview Lisa, amazing interview. You can watch her story on the documentary, but it's crazy, like what happened to her and how she transformed at the end. Basically, in one of the ceremonies, the shaman was like, after 10 days, was like, you know, we did a lot of work, but like I noticed, and this is crazy how they can even see this shit. Like sometimes it blows my mind. You have some spirits in your womb. Did you have any abortions? And she's like, yeah, I had 2. He's like, I see 3. And she's like, no, I only had 2. I know for sure. He's like, anyways, let's do. I need you to stay do a few more ceremonies because this really, like, in order for you to like heal, there's unresolved energy here. Whatever, however you phrase it. So they do the ceremony. He ends up seeing 3. She's still kind of in denial, but they end up like clearing it out. Whatever they do with this kind of process. And on her flight home, she got her period for the first time in 18 years. She had not had a menstrual cycle.
Wow.
And after the healing, she got her menstrual cycle back after that and had it ever since. And I was like, holy shit. And she went back and she told her mother what happened. And her mother said, Lisa, you don't remember. You were just like really messed up on heroin. You did have 3. There was a 3rd one that you don't remember.
No way.
Yeah. And that was a crazy story. So anyways, so I'm going to go into the editing. And I'm about to like edit the documentary, and I pull up Dave the shaman that came, and the whole file's corrupted. And I'm just like, oh my God, it was such a good interview. And like I couldn't get nothing. Like I didn't have like a Danny there that could probably hack his way into the files, like nothing. Like it was just like no good. I'm like, man, this guy doesn't even have Instagram. He's like he's off the map. Like, so I sent him an email. And I'm like, hey man, this is what happened. If you're ever back in the area, I know it's a bother. If not, like don't worry about it, whatever. Next day I get an email back. He's like, hey man, I'm actually gonna be there this Saturday. He's like, come, we'll do the interview, no problem. I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, shit, I don't have a crew, I don't have a camera, I don't got nothing. It was like such short notice. I borrow a buddy's camera. I shoot up there. I have no idea even how to use this thing. Okay, like I always brought someone with me to do the camera stuff. So I don't have like audio, video, lighting, nothing. I get there and half the people at this retreat are from the Toronto film and music industry, like all the professionals. So they set up all the lighting, the camera, like it's like more than I could ever ask for. And the interview went so good because like I knew what I asked him last time. I had other questions that I wanted to ask him that I didn't. So I nailed it. I'm like, wow, man, this is like so amazing. And I go back into like this little farmhouse after the interview and I'm just like, oh man, like how perfect was that? And I'm having a glass of water and this lady walks in. I start chatting with her and her name is Mindy. She's from Boston. I look at her hands and she's got like these deformed hands. And I'm like, you don't know Gabor Mate, do you? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're from Boston, right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, you're never going to believe this. But Gabor Mate told me I should interview for this documentary. And I'm here because my files got corrupted and I just came up. I'm like, what are the chances? Like, of you being here? It was like, my mind was blown in that moment. What? And she's like, absolutely, I'll do it. And so I end up getting her in the documentary completely by chance.
What?
Like I get goosebumps when I think about it. It was like 1 in a billion chance. And I think like somehow the ayahuasca and that card, like it knew, like something corrupted it at the perfect time to line all this up so I get her in the documentary.
Damn.
And I was like, how does that happen? And if you watch the documentary, you see her story in there. It's like amazing. And she was like the focal point of like the transformation stories in the documentary. And so when I started thinking about like my experience with ayahuasca and how there's this spirit to it that I really truly believe in, and it's been such a guide and teacher in my life. And you know, like I've probably done like 100 ceremonies. Like I lost count somewhere along the way. People think, man, you must be really messed up to do that much like ayahuasca. But like, no, it's not about that. Like, yeah, the first, you know, 20 or so, like, yeah, I'm just realizing how messed up I am and like all the things need to change. But after, it's like such this education in life.
Education every single time.
It's like learning about myself in ways that like I never thought possible, like understanding where my fears come from and my patterns and my programming and how to overcome them. Like just recently, as I'm closing down, I'm in the studio now. So after 7 years, I opened this thing up. I went through this whole kind of thing, came back. I'm kind of like contemplating what I do with this space. I'm going through this whole thing of like, my life is too complex. I don't know what to do. I know I got to make changes. I don't know where to start. And I'm like, okay, I love the space of hot and cold. I help my friends that launch other ship, you know, like, I see what they're doing. And I'm like, yeah, I think this community-based hot and cold is the way of the future. Dana White just went to their place when UFC was in Toronto and like endorsed them.
No
They're
way.
doing amazing.
Sweet.
Really, really like smart guys, great team. So I'm like, I think there's room for more of this. So I'm going to like redo this whole thing and bring all these investors in and like whatever, like try to like ramp it up, like just go for it. And I go in the fall, I'm in Costa Rica and I go into this, I'm about to go into ceremony. One rule is don't check your email before ceremony, right? It's probably a no-no. Yeah. For some reason I do, and I get this email from my ice bath supplier and they're like, you make all these changes to go up to code. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. And like this crazy email, half the stuff I disagreed with. There's no real code for ice baths yet when it comes to a lot of building codes because they're too new. Like, so like some people say, yeah, just go buy the hot tub stuff, but just put me into this like downward spiral of like going into worst case scenarios. It's like, oh, someone's going to get hurt. Oh, it's going to take us too much. Oh, I got to shut this whole place down. Like, oh my God, why when this little thing happens, my mind goes into like worst case scenarios. Okay, that's my intention. I want to go into fear. And after doing a lot of ayahuasca, like fear is not always a fun intention because like you're going to go into your fears. You're going to feel it. You're going to like be brought into it. And it's crazy because it showed me where it came from. And it showed me that when I was a kid, I stole something from another kid, like a G.I. Joe, and I got caught. I was a bad thief. I was a horrible thief. And I got caught and I didn't know what the punishment was going to be. I just knew I was in a lot of trouble. And I couldn't handle the uncertainty. So my mind started thinking of like any possible situation so I could at least grasp to a potential outcome. And it would help me feel a little bit more safe because how am I going to prepare myself for that? Like get grounded for the rest of my life or like get kicked out of school, like whatever. Like I can't remember what specific, but it showed me how like these like uncertainty, like you should start filling it with like all the worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. This is what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I started seeing how that same pattern started showing up everywhere in my life. And then it showed me another time, like I stole something. I think I stole like 3 or 4 times in my life. I got caught every single time. I stole a comic book from the local convenience store and I got caught. And then again, like I was like all worried about what was going to happen. And there was one more time. It doesn't really matter. And then when it started showing me, it was like the story started evolving. Whereas, okay, that was the first lesson to see where it came from. But the second lesson was like, never make your story more important than your humanity. And what it was showing me in those situations was like me wanting that G.I. Joe became more important than how it was going to affect the kid I stole it from, which was probably his favorite toy. Because I felt entitled because I didn't have it. I wanted it. You know, like I needed it or I wanted to be the guy with it was more important than me worrying about how my action was going to affect someone else. Mm-hmm. And the convenience store, like this was like, this guy's putting food on the table for his family. And my parents didn't give me money to go buy a comic book. So I think I'm just going to steal one. Because I need that. All my other friends have comic books. Like this bullshit was showing me is like, you got to make sure in life, like you can never make your story become greater than your humanity. And that's like, was really important, like litmus test to live by. So when you're doing things, just make sure like you're in alignment with like being moral. But it said also, like, if you need to kill for what you believe in, just make sure it's like to save your kids or to do something like that you really believe in, like that's okay. But you got to make sure the reason why you're doing it is the right reasons. And so each night would bring me deeper into like my fears. And again, the fear of death came up the second night. And in this moment of being in this experience, this voice comes, and it was like, have faith in us. That's what it said to me. And I didn't know who was talking to me, because it was like this female voice, but it was my imagination. It said again. And, you know, I went through this kind of like death experience in that ayahuasca, and I kind of like feel like I'm in this like middle space. And I started realizing what it was saying. Us meant like the plant medicine, it meant God, it meant me. And it said like we're all part of the same thing. And it was showing me the only real antidote to fear itself is to have faith in this higher kind of order of things and this higher power, and bring me back to like that spiritual kind of way of living. Because when you don't have the spiritual faith, what happens? Your fear is going to come in every single time. You know, and it's just, you know, even like a lot of the Bibles and spiritual texts, like, yeah, like in those moments, like you have to have faith in God. You have to have faith in a higher power. And that's what carried all these people through. So it really just like kind of wrapped a bow on that experience and showed me like, okay, everything's gonna be okay. Just have faith. And so I came back and I started seeing like this thing, that's this whole space, this biggest fear of like failure and stuff like that. I started realizing this is not what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Like going harder to try to prove that I can do this business, that's a good opportunity, was like, no, this is not what we're supposed to do. Focus on the other things like the Breathwork company and the personal development school. So I did. So I shut the company down, and like everything kind of just worked out after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in these journeys, have you ever found out or realized what happens after death in the human evolution?
The only thing that I know is that it doesn't end. You know?
What doesn't end?
The experience. There's more.
Of what?
There's more. I've been in like the dark ocean of nothingness, and slowly just like realizing that I exist, like not even knowing what like a body is or a hand or an arm. It's just like there's something, and I feel like it's trying to show me. But what I believe to be most true is that what's beyond here, we don't even have the capacity to understand or rationalize with the human mind. Mm-hmm. It's more than we can even comprehend, and that's why we can't go there right now.
Yeah, but plant medicine ceremony, just like this, like the death of you, the ego, but the becoming, all the maggots, the everything. It's like a tiny glimpse.
It's like a tiny glimpse.
Yeah.
But it's just like the scratching of the surface to let me know that there's more.
Yeah.
And what's in there is like probably beyond my wildest dreams of what I can even imagine is possible right now.
Have you seen the movie Lucy with Scarlett Johansson? She's lives somewhere, ends up getting in a bad deal, and like she gets captured, and she's forced to carry drugs inside of her stomach through into a foreign country. Anyway, the drugs end up like splitting and they seep into her. It's like kind of like the movie Limitless, where he takes it and he can access a million. So anyway, the drugs like basically allow her to access 100% of her brain over like several days. And like it's her evolution of like that, and like how she can move her hand into different dimensions and then like control material things. And it's just a wild movie to think about, of like what is the possibility, because we're always told like we're only accessing 20% of our brain.
Yeah, like my own personal belief is that like we're not conscious enough as humanity to be able to evolve to the frequency that comes next. And I think the higher the frequency, the more complex and beautiful things get. And I think that like, I believe we kind of get tested as humanity. I think like humanity is way older than what history books say. And I think we kind of like evolved to a current, like an apex. Mm-hmm. And if we're not able to like move forward, like there's like a reset that happens, whether it's a natural reset or man-made reset or something. It's like if we could keep coming back to it. They talk about in the Matrix, if you watch the Matrix, we talk about like the machines going down like for 7 generations. Each time they'd go down, the population would get up, and they'd go down until what happens, Neo like breaks through, evolves, his consciousness evolves. It's not about winning a war, it's about a shift. And I think that's kind of like a metaphor of like where we're at with humanity. But we keep on fighting, and we keep on going like more dualistic, like opposite, you know, like all these differences we see and all this kind of thing. But I think if we can hit this unity point, then I think there's an evolution of consciousness where I think reality wouldn't exist like this anymore. It'd be like something different.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
I agree with you. I think like we're getting to that point of some that duality of like people want to, whatever your theories are, of depopulate the world, or like the evolution of our consciousness and the community that is building. I think because of what happened with COVID, it gave people the opportunity to be home and research and figure out like, all right, what do they really want? What can they really research and find out about themselves? And I feel like, as Jag said earlier, like there's a lot more people around in your life now that are more curious about what you're doing, what can be a deeper exploration in themselves. And it's pretty special. And yeah, I don't know, the question of different civilizations kind of come up, and I know that you've talked about that.
Rabbit hole,
yeah, right. Like, I mean, all the Egyptians, how they just disappeared, or the Anunnaki, or like all these like.
Yeah, like I think one thing that through just a lot of like internet research, and I don't. I take everything on the internet with a grain of salt.
Right.
So like,
Of course.
I'll read things that seem very believable, but okay, there's a really good chance this could be like bullshit. But also a lot of things that I've seen like in reputable news sources also like been proven to be complete bullshit as well. So it's like, hey, like anything's up for grabs right now.
Of course.
So
Yes.
it's like, what makes the most sense to me that
Right.
I resonate with, right? And there's all kinds of crazy theories. Like, is the earth round or flat? You know, was there like advanced civilizations before? Like they find these like interesting things like the Baghdad battery, or they found like these like fossilized kind of gearboxes that are like tens of thousands of years old, or you know, humanity keeps getting older and older. They're kind of finding these things, and like even Graham Hancock is saying like, hey, like something strange happened like 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, carvings of UFOs in
like,
the
we
rock.
don't know.
Like, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we don't know.
Yeah.
And you can lose yourself in that rabbit hole of trying to figure out with your mind, like, oh my God, what's the truth? Right? But I think ultimately this whole experience is supposed to be mysterious and confusing, because it's not about like figuring out what's actually happening in the physical world. It's about actually what's happening in our inner world.
And about enjoying that. Like, I think who said about that the best is Ram Dass, right? Like, he did so much exploration to find out what we truly are beyond the humanoid, whatever. And ultimately he's like, well, I am human, and I need to experience and enjoy this experience in this skin bag, whatever, in this lifetime. And yeah, it just like always comes back to me of like just being grateful.
Yeah.
And you can do so much inner work, but there's always more. It's like the more you know, the less
It's
you
always
know.
more. But if you think about it as like a creator and designer, like imagine creating this like game. It was the first season of Westworld. I don't know if you click the sci-fi kind of futuristic, but it's interesting because like imagine you're making like this map in this like, well, think about like what we have now, like VR game. Like you go into it, like it could be in the same thing. This like really advanced like VR, and it's a mystery. But the answer is not even in the game anywhere. It's inside of you, right? And a lot of people that go down this path, at first they're searching the whole world for the guru, for the answer, and they realize that, oh, actually, like there's something within me that has greater answers than anything external. But sometimes you have to go there to get there. You have to go through all that and search and figure out like, wow, what's wrong? Like even me, like chasing all this money, I realized like, okay, like there's no answer there. I'm not saying like money's bad or anything like that. Like, listen, it's a form of energy, but that pursuit, that relentless pursuit of it was wrong. Like it wasn't there. What the answer wasn't there for me, and that kind of led me like further down like my journey, step by step, like, you know, leading to ayahuasca, then like meeting Wim Hof, getting to breathwork, and you know, kind of where I'm at now is like, you know, like I was mentioning earlier, you know, I teach people breathwork now. And like, if you talked to me like 10 years ago and I was, you know, pumping food sales into like, you know, grocery stores and like building constructions, like I would never be doing that. But the first time I like led a breathwork that someone had a breakthrough or they came and said like, hey man, like this changed my life. Like the feeling that I got was like the greatest amount of profit I've ever experienced that I couldn't equate to like business at all. And that's kind of when I knew it's like, okay, like I got to do something around this. You know, I really got to figure this out. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to support a family or whatever, but like there's something that feels really good about this. And I just started doing it, and, you know, it just started growing. And like, you know, like what actually happened was I had that podcast, and we started having these little gatherings, like as I was kind of like trying to find my tribe when I came back from ayahuasca the first time and didn't know like who to speak to, and just trying to find like anyone who was kind of out there, like talking about crystals or astrology or like you name it, right? Reiki, what's that? Okay, let's meet up. And I would go on the internet and find videos of interesting people, and we'd share them. Maybe do a meditation or breath work. And I found this one of Wim Hof. And I remember showing my wife the video. I'm like, I'm going to meet this guy one day. And he was like climbing the mountain in his shorts and like doing some crazy things. And literally like a year later, he was like staying at my place in Ontario. And I was hosting him for this thing he was doing, this Toronto retreat. But anyways, I invited him to be on a podcast, and I caught him like at the perfect time, because like 6 months later is like he kind of was just taking off, and like up, yeah. Then it was like, you know, you need to be someone to talk to this guy. Like it's just like this team would like, you want to get through, you know.
How did you meet him?
I just invited him to be I was working this website, and I was like, hey man, I got this new podcast, I want to help you guys, send you some traffic to your website, you know, we do
just
blogs,
email,
stuff like that. Email, hopped on a call, just me and Wim on a Zoom call, just chatted, and he's like, we do the interview, and he's like, yeah, you should come to our training. We're doing our first ever facilitator training in the States. I'm like, okay, sounds good, I'll do it. It sounds like a lot of fun. And like now I'm just like trying to get into this new space. I'm like, okay, I gotta build a following. I need people to follow me. It's perfect. I gotta go take a picture with women in my shorts. It'd be perfect for my Instagram. Like this is why I'm thinking I'm going there, to like bump my Instagram up with a picture on a mountain. And I go and I show up, and we're in this like log cabin up in Colorado, about like 40 people, and we're going around the circle, and everyone's kind of like introducing themselves and telling these incredible stories of transformation from breathwork, cold exposure, and just being in nature. Like people getting over addictions, people getting over chronic pain, physical transformations, mental health, depression, anxiety. Like one by one, I'm feeling more and more of an imposter of like, what am I doing here? Like, why did I even come here? Like just like being blown away. It comes to me like, yeah, like kind of here for the experience. I thought it'd be cool to take a picture with Wim and like whatever. Like just like, I don't know why I'm here pretty much, but I'm excited to be here. And we have this amazing week where like jumping in frozen lakes and like climbing mountains in our shorts and like just really connecting with the group. I remember this one exercise where they get us to go in this like frozen lake. It's just not frozen. And like there was like a foot of like silt at the bottom, so your feet would just sink right in. It was so cold. I felt like the mud was colder than the actual water.
Wow.
And we're a bunch of competitive dudes. No one wants to be the first guy to get out. So we're in there forever. Finally, like they're like, okay, let's just get, everyone's gonna get out. Guys were like crawling up, like turning away. I thought someone was gonna like not make it back. I couldn't feel my feet for about like 45 minutes. I thought it was gonna be another one of those calls to my wife. So, babe, I guess I'm gonna tell you, I had to amputate my toes. But I was okay. And towards the end of the week, he led us on this like deeper breathing experience, and where at that point I was like, okay, whatever Wim says, I'm gonna do. You know, like I've had such an amazing experience, and like whatever. So he's like leading us, is playing with this drum, he's chanting, he's like breathe faster, holds like just for like 30-40 minutes. All of a sudden I feel this like vibration rush, like a jet engine's about to take off. Like I'm like, whoa. So I keep breathing, and then like I just like have this out of body experience. Like I just like leave my body completely, and I'm floating around like the top of this like 20-foot cabin, looking down, seeing myself, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm dead. like a log must have fell from the roof and like smashed my head or something. Like it didn't make any sense. It was more crisp than even like an ayahuasca experience. Like,
wow.
It's like I was out of my body, I could see myself. But then I got scared, and the fear kind of like, I guess, snapped me back into my body, and like I was back on the floor again, and I was just like, what just happened? And I felt this like rush of emotion, like I had to cry. And like I hadn't cried in a very long time. I definitely didn't want to cry in front of all these very competitive people, you know. But like in a split second, I was like, I don't care, and I just started bawling, and I bawled like that 4-year-old like booger cry where you're like, just like tears are coming down. And as I was crying, the insight was just like letting go of all of this like expectation I put on myself, letting go of all this pressure of needing to be successful, needing to be the guy, support your family, support your parents. And I was telling myself, it's okay just to be you. It's okay just to try your best. And it was like the most transformative experience. I was like, okay, like this is why I came here. You know, I need to like find myself a little bit more. And that finally ended. And like for the next 3 or 4 days, I couldn't just stop thinking about that experience. I was like, what was that? How did that happen? You know, like what even allows something like that to happen just by breathing? And that like shot me into breath work. I got back to Toronto. I was like, okay, I need to find teachers. I need to find anyone who can like teach me about like breath work. And I'd find myself going to like these like old hippie apartments that are kind of like incense burning and things hanging on the walls. It was like kind of uncomfortable for me. I was like, okay, like, you know, breath work, I'm just going to learn from whoever. And I just started like creating my own practice and using the rhythm of the music and specific meditations to help guide me to go deeper. And eventually like elemental rhythm was kind of like created. I just started sharing with people like, because it was working for me, and then they would have the experiences. And that's what I was saying before, like you'd see this transformation happen in a moment, and it would like blow my mind completely, because like you can almost feel it when it happens as a facilitator. Like I'm feeling them go into a space of gratitude, and like I can feel it in my body, and then they come up and share like this experience. And it was so like woo, that kind of stuff to me, like this energy kind of thing was like weird. Like I was like business guy, I hear people talk about it. I was like, oh, whatever. But then you start experiencing like, holy crap, like there's something real about that. And so I'm doing that for a while, and like I opened this space because I now need a space for all this stuff, and have this class that's kind of building. We have this like waiting list, and all of a sudden like COVID hits, and like the center's like obviously like shut down, and all my staff are, okay, now you got to teach us how to do this. You got to teach us how to facilitate. And I'm still like, I'm not a teacher. If I would have read my human design, I would have known I should have been a teacher. But I was like, nah, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to do it. Like, I was just making excuses because I didn't want to do it. But I was also like, this is my thing. You know, it's my unique kind of like competitive advantage. You know, as you'd say in the business world, this is like my proprietary thing that people come to my class for it.
Yeah.
And so let me think about it. Let me meditate on it. So I meditate that night, and immediately, like as I go into meditation, like the insight is like, yeah, man, if your mission is to help as many people as possible, you have to just teach people how to do this. Don't worry about you. Don't worry about competition. Don't worry about all that bullshit that's, you know, in the ego mind. It's just like share openly, just give, and just be open to receive. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So I'm gonna try it. So our first group, I throw everything in my brain onto a piece of paper. It was so unorganized and like whatever, but it worked. And what happened next kind of shocked me, because they started sharing it with like their friends and family as their practice sessions, and they were coming back and saying like Gio, like you have no idea how grateful I am. Like I did a breath work with my dad, and it was the first time I ever seen my dad cry, and he said sorry to me, and we forgave each other for all this shit. And it was one of the most important experiences of my life. And although I wasn't there to witness it, when they were sharing it, I felt it. Like I was feeling these things, and it was like, yes, like this is right. This is what you're supposed to be doing.
Fulfillment.
So I was like, okay, I guess we got to do more trainings. And then from there, like we got like, you know, 300-400 people around the world now. We're traveling, we're doing these things.
Wow.
And like, I got so many stories that will just like blow your minds. Like a doctor that tried ayahuasca, didn't work on her. Like she was like in her head and whatever. And she found us, and she started doing this breath work, and she went to ayahuasca because she worked in a pain clinic, and she saw a lot of her patients, and she was going down that same path. And she's like, she knew if she kept doing what she was doing in the next 10 years, she'd either have cancer or die. Like that's what she knew. High blood pressure, insomnia, you know, couldn't sleep, all these kind of things. Within 1 month of doing breath work, she came to our website, just started like doing the tracks every day. She got off all her medication.
Wow.
And she started sleeping. And then she wanted to become a facilitator. She became a facilitator, and she started like feeling again. She's like, I couldn't feel emotion my whole life, and I didn't know why. I thought something was wrong with me.
Wow.
But she was just so blocked. She started connecting with herself. And then even in her pain clinic, she said like, we started doing breath work with all of our patients. We stopped using general anesthetic, and we only use localized now.
What?
And I was just like, how is this possible? You know? And I'll tell you one more story, but there's hundreds
That's
of them.
amazing.
I'll tell you one more story. And if I'm blabbering too much, just cut me off, because you know you can edit this out after, right, Danny? If I'm blabbering too much. So I get invited to go to this this men's retreat in Peru, and we're going there to drink San Pedro, which is a cactus. San Pedro is the Spanish called it San Pedro. They had this huachuma was a cactus. Mescaline is the active ingredient in it. And when the Spaniards came in, the priests drank it, and they called it San Pedro because they said it allowed them to see the gates of heaven when they drank this thing. That's why they call it San Pedro. And so it was like a 2-week trip or something like that. And, so we drink San Pedro and we have a couple of days off. And so one of these days we're just visiting one of the sites. It's like this ancient water kind of temple on top of a mountain. We're not drinking San Pedro this day. It's like an integration day. And the leader, JJ, is like, you should do a breathwork up here. I'm like, okay, you have a speaker? He pulls out this like little USB speaker. It's probably like this big. It's like, perfect. Like, we'll make it work. So we do a breathwork, all these guys, and like, it was like amazing. Like everyone was obviously in a retreat. Everyone's like there to go all in. You're really like connected to the group energies there. And a guy I just met that week, like he went like so deep, and he was just like having one of those like booger cries like I had when I had the experience, like just in it for like 30 minutes after. And after he's kind of like comes back, he comes up to me and it's like, yeah, like what happened? He's like, I healed my autoimmune disease. I'm like, what? And I'll tell you, like, I've been to a lot of like ayahuasca ceremonies where people are in these heightened states. Like I've met like 3 future presidents already, like people that think they're going to be the president of the United States. So, like I always take these things with like a grain of salt. Like, okay, like what happened? And he's like, yeah, I just went back to this, like he grew up in like a cult kind of religious environment that was like very like you're a sinner, you're bad, you're going to hell type thing. End up running away like as a young teenager. Yeah. And yeah, basically, he had this experience where he went, saw his inner child who was locked into a cage to protect himself. And he said, it's okay, it's safe to come out right now, whatever. He said in that moment when he took his inner child out of the cage, he felt this weight lift off of his stomach. And he said, for the last 10 years, like he's had this autoimmune issue. All right, Jake, that's amazing. Like, I hope really like you're healed. 2 months later, I'm in Alaska. I get invited to go do a workshop up there. And we're in our Airbnb, and like Jake shows up. I didn't even know he was coming. And he comes in with like a 6-pack of beer. And it was like we were drinking these things. I think it was like alcohol for, I don't know. Anyways, a 6-pack of beer. And he's so excited. He's like, hey, Gio, guess what? I can eat pizza and drink beer now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I totally forgot about like the whole, like his autoimmune thing. He's like, yeah, if I would have like had 1 bite of pizza or drink 1 sip of beer, I would have been like diarrhea, blood, like all this stuff. My stomach would have been in shambles. Since that day, it's like I can eat whatever I want.
No way.
And I was just like, kind of like in shock at that moment, because like when he said it, I kind of like dismissed it. Like I knew the experience he had was profound, but the healing side of it, I was kind of like, it sounded a little far-fetched, right? And when he came back, he told me, I was like, wow, like it's crazy. Like the more you look into breath work, man, like there's like this whole spectrum of like from performance to like health and optimization, all the way to these like, deeply transformational, like spontaneous healings, it sounds like. And those are like 2 stories of like so many that are in our community and other communities as well,
right.
So it's become like my life's work, that and like the personal development school, which is, I was telling you, my partner Thais, with another really synchronistic story that we kind of just connected. And I was at the center that I closed, and when I was there, I was like, okay, like how do I help people more? I got to become a life coach. So I took this coaching course to become a life coach, and I needed a guinea pig to kind of like practice on. And I had just bumped into Thais the week before at that vegan fest. I'm like, wow. Hey, you want to, because we knew we were both into these kind of things. She's like, yeah, for sure, I'll do it. And she at the time was a coach who had this like super long waiting list, because what she was doing is very different. She was like really helping people transform. And through the coaching, we realized, okay, if you're going to scale, you can't do what you're doing. You're going to burn out. You need to like do an online business and all this stuff. And she's like, oh, you got to be my business partner. I'm like, listen, if I tell my wife I'm starting another business, she's going to kill me. This is like right after like getting out of like the food business and the tattoo business and like all of these things. For some reason, again, like I had that spark inside me that was like, just help Thais, like just figure out a way to do it, like help her. And thank God that I did. We became like best friends, and she's like taught me so much, and this business kind of just been like growing ever since. Wow. And like, it's been just a lot of like unlearning and trusting, and, you know, not like a lot of things, if I would have thought of it strictly from the business mind, like this whole 7 years of this business, I should have like shut it down like after year one. But it was serving a different purpose, and it led to so many other amazing things. And I look back at all like the really hard moments in my life, and I realized how much those served me as I kind of moved through them and learned and made changes. And the things that I held on to longer than I should, I saw how much suffering they were causing me until I realized, okay, like I need to make a change around this part of my life. And when I see other people suffering and struggling now, I get excited for them. And I tell them like, hey, like you're a great opportunity right now, you know? And they're like, screw you, man. Like you have no idea what I'm going through. And I remember being in that same spot, telling people I was struggling, like one of my shamans once, and I was like in the worst place possible. And he's like, don't worry, man. Everything's gonna be just fine. I'm like, you have no idea what I'm going through. Like, you're full of shit, whatever. Yeah. And that voice always came back, like as I was going through it, you know, because it will be. Your suffering is like your beliefs about the situation, what you think is gonna happen.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that's so great about breath work is, you know, we talked earlier about how, you know, you've traveled the world and experienced all these different plant medicines or different modalities, but so much of it you come back to at the end of the day and finding that power is always within you. And I think, you know, breath work is such a spectacular way to introduce someone to looking inward, because it's just you breathing oxygen in the format of following, you know, some kind of guidance. But it's really a great entryway, I feel like, and something that anyone and everyone can do simply at home or through the guidance of, you know, a practice like elemental rhythm. But it's just a very, now getting to a very deep state of connection with it, I don't think is easy. Like I remember my first time going to a breathwork class, I was 20 years old in San Diego and had no idea I was I was with Jason Goldsmith again. And we were, I thought, going to just this like lecture basically where we were going to learn about the power of breath. And then beforehand, he's like, hey, they told us to bring a pillow. And it was at this yoga studio. I had no idea what I was getting into and didn't go into it with that much of an open mind at all. And we went into this 3-hour breathwork, you know, session where, you know, people were having these really intense out of body experiences. And I didn't really deeply connect with it because I just was frankly probably in a bit of a judgmental mindset of just like what is going on around me. But since then, I've had a couple incredible breathwork sessions. I remember, most namely, the first one I really deeply connected with was in New Zealand at a retreat center called Aroha. And there was just this phenomenal breathwork, you know, practitioner named Fraser Beck that led this just beautiful class. And like, I literally had this out of body experience. And at this point, I had experimented with hallucinogenics before, and I'd taken mushrooms and had kind of these intense, you know, visualizations and out of body like feelings. And now here I am laying on a yoga mat, completely in a state of sobriety, and going through this breath work session where I literally have left my like body and had these incredible connections where I could see myself and connect with just this deeper power within me that was so beyond who I was just laying there. And again, I just think it's so powerful because that is all from within you. You know, that place that I was able to reach that day was just through the power of breathing oxygen. And I don't really have a point to that rant other than just, I think it's a great gateway into exploring yourself as breath work. And I imagine you've been able to introduce so many people to just that gift.
Yeah, the science is starting to catch up to that. I remember too, like the first time I did breath work was actually that first trip I went to Brazil. They had a holotropic breath work facilitator there, and I was the same as you. I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. Like, are these people all actors? Like, they're screaming and freaking out. Like, what's going on here? Like, nothing happened. It just took me some time to kind of like really be able to drop into it.
Sure.
But the other thing is like these breathwork practices, the brain waves start to change. You go from like beta to alpha and theta. And then there's this thing called like transient hypofrontality. We get to this like super creative mode. And a lot of like the ideas I have in like business or like insights on where to take things come in these kind of spaces where like I'm breathing, my analytical mind kind of like shuts off. They've shown like default mode network and kind of like the activity will change, which allows you to go into like the subconscious parts of the brain and problem solving in a different way from a different perspective. And I've had so many amazing insights that have really helped like guide me when it comes to like the business world and stuff like that, where it's not from that super analytical part of the mind, it's more from like deeper parts of the brain. And just recently, just a couple of days ago, like I had this insight, which I'm kind of just sitting with right now, but it's like, yeah, you need to make all your trainings not for profit, like the Breathwork Facilitator training. And again, there's part of this like ego that's like, oh man, like really? And it's like, it just makes like in my heart, it makes sense. Like, okay, you want it to grow, you want more people, you have to find a way to like make it not profit and make it sustainable and like support the team. And so I'm kind of sitting with that one right now and figuring out how to integrate that. I kind of told my team, and they're like, oh, you're crazy again, you're gonna change things. I'm like,
well, now you just spoke it out.
I just said in the world, yeah. It's like I have to figure out how to make that happen. So if you know anyone running an awesome nonprofit that is doing amazing things in the world, let me know. And
yeah, we're trying.
I think you might know a few guys.
Speaking of breath work,
well,
go ahead.
One question I have though about breath work is, I think, you know, there's stigmas in our brain that we think like we can't get to these places. And I imagine similar to myself that walked into that session in San Diego and had this judgmental mindset of like, this isn't going to do anything to me. This is weird. How do you get past that in your head? When you introduce this to someone, how do you fight that stigma or that kind of judger that's going on in your head?
Good question.
And break through it and open your mind into experiencing something new?
Yeah. So the first point is like, you can't force anyone to change. So if someone doesn't want to be there, then there's a higher likelihood that they're not going to have an experience because they just don't want to be there. I see a lot of times when people are struggling, like their partner or their family is trying to push them to do things so they want them to change. But I've never seen anyone get forced to change unless they want to. And a lot of times it's sad, but it takes people hitting a rock bottom for them to realize, okay, I really need to change something in my life. It could be a sickness, a death in the family, a traumatic event. Even for myself, a lot of my changes come from me hitting a rock bottom of just like whatever, like a failure or, you know, getting sick or whatever. You know, and the second thing around that is like having a space that's really a safe space for them to kind of have that in. So the environment is important, you know, like the place you went in New Zealand, you know, it was like, it wasn't just a weeknight class where you showed up and there was like all this thing going on. You probably spent a few days with these people. You had a teacher that kind of explained what's going to happen, made you feel safe or explain like, so the environment, it's like the same with psychedelics, set and setting. What's the mindset you're going in with? What's the setting you're walking yourself into? So if you can kind of like focus on those two, having the right guide and the right kind of mindset going in, you're much more likely to have a deeper experience. Plus the willingness for you to want to have that experience there. Like if you don't care, you don't want to, then you're probably not. I have seen people though get dragged to a breathwork, not even knowing what they were showing up with and having their minds completely blown and then becoming like diehard breathwork fans. It happens too.
Yeah.
But sometimes those people that just get dragged in are just like, hey, not for me. Like this was weird.
Yeah, like John, when we had the retreat and we did it at Norte, and he's like, he admitted, I think the first words out of his mouth were, I'm never the guy to share, especially to share anything first. But he raised his hand and he's like, I'm going to share what just happened to me because it blew my mind. And this is a guy who's been in the business world and lives in New York City, New Jersey. And it was very different to the Nassar culture. So,
yeah. And I think there's a lot of changes where in society, like we're realizing, okay, like you don't have to be the tough guy anymore. Like, you know, like you're just going to burn out or break down if you're just like trying to like push, like, it's okay to like work on yourself. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to kind of like not have to just suck it up and have like a tough upper lip and boys don't cry. Even like in the medical world, like a lot of these doctors, like they're struggling, like they're burning out because there's such this high expectation. They're working like crazy hours and they don't take care of themselves either, right? So these kind of things I'm seeing a lot of them coming into plant medicine ceremonies, coming to breath work, and they're really seeing like, okay, like I need to kind of take care of myself. And it only creates better environment for them to perform better. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs that I've met, again, have this fear of like losing their edge. You know, like if I do ayahuasca, I'm not going to want to make money anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's a big fear.
But actually the opposite's true. It's like maybe that drive, the reason why like you're working 100 hours a week is going to be gone. but you're not going to lose your skill set. Now you're going to find something you're passionate about, that you're going to use all these skills that you've already acquired and put in something meaningful, and make a huge impact.
Yep.
Right.
That reminds me of a good book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Yeah,
Have you read it?
Long time ago. Yeah.
It's right on point with that. It's pretty cool. Do we want to do a little breath work real quick?
Yeah.
Can we do something that's 5 minutes? Or a explanation of an intro, or have anything in mind that anyone listening now can?
Yeah. Do you want to do something that's more like just like a relaxing breath work? Do you want to do something that's more like invigorating?
Yeah, something invigorating.
Invigorating. Yeah. So when you're breathing, like as you increase your breathing rate, like you kind of like stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, right? And when you slow down your breathing rate, it'll slow it down. And also breathing through the nose is more parasympathetic. So rest and digest. Breathing through the mouth is more activating. And also inhaling increases heart rate, and exhaling decreases heart rate. So if you extend your exhale, you slow down. So when we do like an activating breath work, it's important to know that like we're not supposed to breathe like this all the time. The best way to breathe is actually reduce your breathing. You want to breathe like less. Like less is more. The more you can build up your CO2 tolerance, which is the ability to like tolerate carbon dioxide in the body, the better you're going to perform in sports. You're going to sleep better. And actually most people overbreathe. So if you breathe most people breathe about 12 to 15 breaths per minute, and 15, 20, 25, if you're breathing in that range, you probably have a lot of side effects from your breathing. So it's important to breathe through your nose. And to slow your breathing down, and even like tape your mouth shut at night. It's like you probably see like these like mouth tape commercials everywhere because they work. If we just want to do like a 2-minute like invigorating, we can do like a double inhale through the mouth and then just an exhale with like a ha. And if we do that we'll do that for like 60 seconds, and then we'll take a deep breath in, we'll hold it, we'll buzz breath out, and then we'll inhale back through our nose. So the buzz breath, what it does is it stimulates a nitric oxide in the nose, and then you can inhale that nitric oxide back in. And nitric oxide is really good for like focus and stuff like that.
It's also called Brahmari.
Brahmari breath. It's kind of a modified Brahmari breath where you put your tongue up to your mouth, you can put your fingers in your ears, and you kind of buzz through your nose. Yeah, Brahmari breath.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we can just do like 30 breaths. So it'll be like this. So that second breath is like right at the top. You're gonna hit that. So double inhale, exhale. We'll do it for 30 breaths. Then we'll take a deep breath in. We'll hold it, and we'll buzz out, and we'll take a sharp inhale back. And we'll see how we feel.
Cool.
Yeah. And if people want to do this like while they're watching,
do not be driving.
Yes.
Do not be in water. You can have this little boost, pick me up during the day, but the thing is, when you do any breathing exercise, you could get lightheaded, you could pass out. And if you pass out while driving, or if you're like, doing your roof, or like, cutting your tree down or something, like
we have a lot of roof listeners actually.
something could happen, right? Or like, you're golfing and pass out, it's not going to be good. So
yeah, don't be driving.
But if you're at home and listening to this or want to go back to it, like you close your eyes.
Yeah, you can close your eyes, just sit up straight, nice tall spine. Okay. So, we'll just count 30 breaths, and then we'll do the full inhale, and then we'll buzz out and take a sharp inhale in. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Any more? 2, 1. Going in. Hold it. We're going to exhale. We're going to hum through our nose. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax your shoulders. Keep humming. Just relax your body. Just feel that buzz in your nose. of air. Just gonna hold on empty for a couple seconds. I take a slow, deep breath back through your nose. And then just slowly exhale. All right, how do you feel?
God, I fucking love breathwork. It makes me tingly and like excited, and
you just get a whole wave of heat through my body too.
Yeah, so that's getting the adrenaline going a little bit when you do that double inhale, sympathetic. The adrenaline will also help with some focus. But then again, like after you do that, it's good to like bring your breath back down. So bring your nervous system down. So just extending your exhales, breathe through your nose. And just slowing your breath back down, just coming back to a more balanced state. So kind of like, you can turn the nervous system on and off. So it's like too much of one is not good, but then too much of like down regulation is also not good. You have to be able to like turn things on and turn them off.
Right.
In the nervous system.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing because everyone has something that they feel different after 30 breaths, just like that. And I'd love to hear like anyone who just did that with us, like comment, because it's amazing. Everyone has something that's profound or different than the 60 seconds before it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if anyone wants to try out any extended breath work, you can go to our website. We have like full journeys, like we have a 40-minute one for free with Nessie Gomez. That's like the full experience you can try with the music, and
it's incredible.
And do it laying down at home. You do it with a partner, by yourself, wear a set of headphones. But it's designed to take you on a bit of a journey, so
it's special.
Can be intense for some.
Yeah, special. I have a rather deep question that's kind of come to me as
I was worried about that. Okay,
out of this.
All right.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? And similarly, if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
Yeah, if I could change one thing about myself, that's a good question, because I feel like I'm always trying to make changes here. One thing about myself would just to be completely fearless. You know, as long as I'm working so much on working on like where I find fear, and also judgment. And judgment is something I've been working on. Judgment to myself, judgment towards others. Because I'm really just trying to be like the best role model I can, but also at the same time trying to like highlight where I need to work on. And I don't think I'm a judgmental person, but like I see like judging myself, even sometimes judging others, you know, to just be the most like authentic and integral person I can be. So I think it's always like leaning into where my fears are and leaning into where like I judge anything, or things that I would want to change about myself or just continue to improve upon. Other than that, what I want to change about the world, man. There's so much. But the one thing I want to change about the world is for people to see each other's similarities before they see their differences, to see the things that kind of connect us so that we can have open conversations about what we disagree on without wanting to kill each other, you know? And really, I think the world is controlled through people feeling fear and insecure and scared. And they hide that by trying to look strong and big and intimidation. But I think there's a lot of wounded people that are running the world right now that want to cling on to power, and they want to just keep consuming because they have a fear that someone else might take it away from them. And my hope is that they're going to have their own awakenings. And I think it's already happening as, you know, people that are in the business world or in place of power are starting to see like, hey, there's a better way to do things. And the only way that can occur is from people kind of doing the inner work. Right? We're never going to get peace from more war. You know what I mean? We're never going to solve poverty by printing more money. And, you know, like just getting rid of things, you know, with like fighting them, you know, we have to change them. And that's going to take a shift in consciousness. But like, if I'm not doing the work and I'm not giving an example to my kids and my community, then how can I expect anyone to change? You know, and I had a really amazing plant medicine ceremony around that where I was like going through the judgment, and I was put in this like the arena of judgment, and it was like seeing all the judgment towards myself and seeing how even sometimes I'm trying to help other people because I really want them to change and I care about them, they interpret that as I'm judging them. And I was like, man, like I'm doing this wrong. Like I want them to change what my communication method is often, to be more compassionate. I just need to lead more by example. And what it came down to was really just like walking the walk, talking the talk, and just like knowing where like I can be better, and just like doing that, and not trying to force anyone else to kind of like do that or have to agree with me. And the more I did that, like around my family, I saw them more accepting towards me, and the more I was like more compassionate towards other people, more compassionate towards myself, I saw that change. And like that's all I can really do, you know. And Ram Dass said the best thing, you know, you can do for me is work on yourself. The best thing I can do for you is work on myself. And so I really try to embody that in the best way I can. But again, like I'm not perfect, you know, but I'm just trying to be a little bit better than I was before. Yeah, I can keep talking about that, but I want to keep going.
No, you said this earlier, in that, you know, you can't force someone to go down the path of wanting to explore or look deeper within themselves. That change, that questioning has to come from within you. And my question to you is, why would you tell someone to go down the path of breath work? Why would someone be curious about that? And why would you tell them to go into that?
So there's a beautiful saying, ignorance is bliss. And, you know, in like the tarot, there's like the Fool, which is like the first card, I think the last card. And it's like what you aspire to be is like this person that's just like where I was before was like the ignorant bliss. And so many times when I started going through my journey, I'm like, man, I wish I could just go back to that. And so it's like, it's kind of like a warning. It's like, hey, when you start doing the work, you're going to open up a lot of things that are going to be hard. But as you move through it, it's worth it. Like I'll never want to go back to where I was before, because I've evolved so much now. And I hope to get to that place where I can become like the Fool again, that just doesn't care about anything and just wandering at the edge of a cliff with not a worry in the world, because I've been able to let go of the attachment to these fears and worrying about these outcomes happening. And breathwork is the perfect tool to open that door. But the most important tool is the one, like I told you, that's in here, which is that curiosity. So if speaking about breathwork or something I said is interesting to you, explore it, try it, figure it out. Like, does it resonate with you? And if not, find something that does. Like, you can find enlightenment anywhere. You know, not that I'm enlightened, but what I've heard other people say is like, it doesn't have to be a singular path towards a destination. There is not really a finite destination either. You know, it's like this continually evolving path of self-awareness. So breathwork is a beautiful tool, because you can do it anywhere. It's free, and it will open your mind to many possibilities. Yeah.
Very well put. I guess that leads us to our final question, though. No, the final question is the same as every podcast we've done so far, and it's basically the title of this podcast, and which is I Can Fly. And we'd like to know if there's any time in your life where you felt that you can fly, whether it's metaphorically or actually.
I used to have dreams about flying when I was a kid, which were pretty wild. But the day after my first ayahuasca experience, I went for a hike in the mountain in Brazil and was looking over the ocean. I literally felt like I was going to float away, because it was just like this like reboot, you know what I mean? Whereas like everything that before that was kind of just like, okay, like you need to forget about all that and we're going to start from scratch. And from that point, it was like anything felt possible.
Wow.
Right. And the power of belief has become so part of my journey that even if you believe something is 1% possible, it means it could happen. Right. So just like feeling into that more. So that was that moment there where I felt like I could fly. I'm telling you, if I had like a hang glider or something, I would have probably just jumped off that cliff right there and gone for it. But yeah, that's the one moment that comes to mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Man, well, thanks for the insight, Gio. I think this was going to be very a doorway for a lot of people.
I hope so.
In their curiosity.
Yeah, I
hopefully.
hope so. I hope so.
And if it becomes just that, what are the best ways that people can find you in practice?
Ring up Morgan and come down to Nakawa. We'll go for a hike into the waterfalls. You can look Instagram Elemental Gio, or Facebook, or our website Elemental Rhythm. Send an email.
Cool.
reach out. I'm pretty accessible. Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Thanks,
Thank you
brother.
very
Yeah. I just want
much.
to say thank you so much for having me. I hope there's something there that someone can pick up on that might, spark a little bit of curiosity in their lives to do something different.
100%.
Certainly did for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
It means a lot, brother.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.